This is The Beat with Radia B, a conversation about the Charleston County Sheriff's Office in our community. Welcome to our latest episode of The Beat, hosted by Radia B. Today we have Lieutenant Christian Covington with us today from the Training Division. Lieutenant Covington, tell us something about yourself, or tell the viewers about you.
I've been working with the Charleston County Sheriff's Office for about 24 years now. My latest assignment, of course, has been with the Training Division. I currently serve as the lead firearms instructor for the Sheriff's Office.
So now, today's episode, we're going to talk about the open carry law. Can you tell us what this new law is about?
Essentially, it was a change and an amendment to the existing law when it came to concealed weapons carry permit holders. The difference would be that anybody who is a permit holder for South Carolina can now carry open, which means unconcealed, rather than originally the concealed carry. There were a few other changes, but the biggest one being that you can now carry openly so long as you're a permit holder.
So how is the Charleston County Sheriff's Office adjusting to this new law?
Honestly, there is not much of a change and an adjustment to be made necessarily. We would treat anybody as if they were going to be somebody who would be potentially carrying a weapon. But we did make sure that all of our deputies and all of our civilians were aware of the actual change in the law and when it happened, which was on August 15th, so that they would be aware that in the event that they were to encounter somebody who was out in public carrying a firearm, that they would not have to be they wouldn't be surprised by that.
Okay. Is there any other training that the deputies are undertaking?
So SLED put something together. They provided us with about a 15-minute video just as an awareness and what to expect when it comes to encountering individuals that are going to be carrying these weapons open, potentially in public, and what the change in the law was. So they did get to watch that video. They provided a few scenarios as to what deputies could expect if they did encounter somebody, what their legal ability or legal expectations were in these encounters.
Okay, and also, are there any restrictions to open carry?
Well, one, this is not a constitutional carry. This is not unrestricted, like some states do have like an unrestricted or constitutional carry. Mm-hmm. Just like a driver's license, you are required to carry or have a permit provided by SLED in order to carry the weapon unrestricted or carry the weapon open. If you do not carry a CWP, you are not able to carry this weapon, concealed or otherwise.
What is a CWP?
A CWP, acronym being Concealed Weapons Permit, okay? CWP allows somebody who would like to carry a weapon concealed, now open, if they so choose to, allows them to carry a firearm in South Carolina, okay? And of course, places that legally provide that.
So how do you get a CWP?
So you would petition that through SLED. Mm-hmm. You would get training, essentially, and it's still in statute. You had to have this firearms training within 3 years of the application of that permit. Usually, somebody who's seeking an application mm-hmm. would get that permit, get that about the same time that they're going to seek that application. They're required to get identification by via fingerprint cards. Mm-hmm. The application requires that you have to be a resident in South Carolina. Generally, that's about 12 months with proof of residency. And be a legal U.S. citizen. You can't be a felon, unfortunately, for those individuals that are felons. Once you satisfied all these requirements and the training, you would be able to carry this firearm. Now, the training has changed since the 15th of August. Because it's open carry, there are a few additional requirements. So they should expect additional training in weapon retention, okay, and the proper carry of a weapon in a holster. They also have a de-escalation requirement as far as de-escalation, verbal de-escalation right. when it comes to encounters.
So if you've had your CWP before the 15th, what happens? Any changes?
You're technically your grandfathered in. Now SLED encourages you to seek the additional training, but it is not required.
Can businesses restrict the carry of firearms on their property?
Absolutely. Nothing's actually changed with that law. So the owner of a business or the one who's legally responsible for that property or business, they can ask somebody to leave. They can restrict the carry of that firearm on their premises. Mm-hmm. There is a provision in statute that requires them to put a sign up not necessarily a prerequisite, but it's a courtesy to anybody who would be carrying a weapon concealed or open now, to have it on their door or beside the entrance, to let anybody know that they do not allow concealable weapons on that property. Okay, and that sign generally is about 8 inches wide, about 12 inches tall. I don't think anybody, as long as it can be seen and read. I mean, if it was like 8 centimeters by 12 centimeters, that'd be one thing, but as long as it's reasonable for somebody to be able to see it upon entry into the business. But even if that didn't exist or that was taken down, and a business owner who was identified themselves as the owner or the person legally responsible for that premises said, I apologize, but I'm going to need you to depart the premises with the open carry. I don't think you're going to have any problems with a person who is permitted by law to carry that firearm. If it were, I mean, there are legal provisions that require them to leave, and if they don't, then they're subject to legal penalties.
What areas where, regardless of whether or not you have a CWP, you cannot enter those facilities?
Well, okay, and I can tell you, we'll start off with this, like residence, for example. You're required as a weapons holder, you cannot enter that premises without the permission of the resident. That is required by law. I want to say the penalties for that are like $1,000 and a year in jail, if possible, not to exceed more than.
Right.
For businesses, it's a little bit less. And this also doesn't change anything as far as like churches, schools, government buildings, obvious places where you would not carry a firearm. You're not allowed to do that. All these places do not, they require you not to have a weapon on property. Okay. And when I mean concealable weapons, that's not just firearms. That's like knives and any kind of weapon that could be used to cause serious physical injury or death. Again, I don't foresee this being an issue with like CWP holders. But they do need to know what the ramifications are for them not complying with the law. Right. Because they can be arrested.
So how can the public educate themselves about the new law?
That's a good question. You can go to the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division's website. If you get on their front page, if you scroll all the way down to that front page, you will see all the amendments when it comes to the Open Carry with Training Act. And they'll give you everything as far as from application to what the changes of the law were and the revisions. Because there were just a couple of revisions, but really just as it pertains to CWP holders. I mean, the sheriff's office is always available, so they can always call, the police department and ask. Worst case scenario, I mean, even if the desk officer wasn't fully aware of all of the laws, they would be able to forward you to the person that could. Like so, awesome. They would come to training, so they would forward you to me.
I'm pretty sure in everything that we've done at the Sheriff Department, we have been accessible to our community to let them know the resources and information moving forward. So another question I have is, how will the public know the difference between good and bad actors?
They won't. Just like law enforcement, we're not always going to know necessarily. I mean, a license holder would obviously be acting in accordance to law. A CWP holder would not be brandishing a firearm and waving it around. Okay, they've received that training. They know the discipline that comes with it. They understand that there are infractions would be incurred if they were to act inappropriately with the firearm. So it's not the lawful citizens and lawful permit holders that we're really worried about. It would be those individuals that are brandishing the firearm, being aggressive with it. They would it's obviously that they would be acting outside the scope of somebody who would be carrying a permit.
What are the legal responsibilities of the police when encountering somebody with a firearm?
So if I were to see somebody just walking down the sidewalk, minding their business, they're open carry, of course, and there is no other provocation for me to make an approach to this person other than the fact that they were carrying that firearm. Essentially, I mean, I can wish them a good day. If I decide to ask them a question, I can, but they don't necessarily, they have no legal requirement to stop and talk to me about that, unless I have that legal requirement. Unless there is something something with articulable suspicion, something that provides me provocation legally to stop that person. They're okay. You're required by law to carry a driver's license. in order to operate a motor vehicle on South Carolina roadways, right?
Right.
But I can't stop vehicles just to see if they have a driver's license.
Right.
It would be the same thing with a licensed permit carrier in the state of South Carolina for carrying a weapon. I can't just stop somebody for carrying a weapon just to see if they have a license. I would have to at least provide them that benefit of the doubt. Okay. Now, if they're doing something illegal or potentially doing something legal that I can articulate that, reasonably, that I believe that this person is a commission of a crime, then I could stop them. And then, of course, they would have to provide me that identification upon request. And
so what should parents be communicating to their children about seeing more guns in public?
If it's possible, if the child is articulate enough to understand what it is that, what they're explaining to them as far as you may see more weapons in public, if it does look off or seem a little weird to you, please let an adult know. Let an adult close by know. Mm-hmm. Nothing's changed at all. Nothing has changed when it comes to encountering a weapon. Let's say if even one was on the ground, what they're supposed to do. You go tell an adult. You do not try to touch the gun. You don't pick it up. You don't move it. You go see an adult. Parents, I would stress that they would educate their children about firearms. It's up to the parents if they even want to teach their kids, go further as far as the education or the use of firearms, depending on the appropriate age and everything else. They shouldn't be touching the firearm. Something strange that they see, they should let an adult nearby, somebody who, a guardian, let them know immediately what they found or what they've seen.
That's some wonderful insight on our new open carry law and its restrictions and requirements. Again, this is the latest episode of The Beat, hosted by Radia B, along with Lieutenant Christian Covington.
Thank you, Radia.
Thank you. This has been The Beat, a conversation about the Charleston County Sheriff's Office in our community. I am Radia B. Look for future episodes by following the Charleston County Sheriff's Office on Facebook, YouTube, or wherever you go to get your podcasts.